I remember I'm sitting in the bus up in the lounge area, and Sebastian walks in the bus, and he's like, "What's up, Randy?" I'm like, "Hey, good show." And I remember you're sitting right across from me. He turns around, looks at you. He looks at me. He's like, "Who's this guy? Who is this guy?" I'm like, hey. It's like I thought he was gonna attack you, throw you off the bus. I said, hey, Sebastian, that's our sound guy. What? It's our sound guy. It's Ryan. He's like, oh man, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, man. He goes, I didn't know who you were. I thought you were just a fan. And like, oh my gosh, man.
But then he goes,
I thought you were a goner.
Then he goes like he went from, getting ready to kill me to like instantly he's like, dude, that was the best I've ever sounded in my whole life. You were awesome. I'm like, oh, all right, I guess it went pretty good then. This is all right. So, but
yeah, and it was a great show.
Yeah, it really was. It was a small place, but that made it. I mean, to be honest with you, from the show perspective, it made it better. If it was a big empty room, it wouldn't have been as much fun. But it was,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tiny stage, it's a tiny place, but it was a good night considering. I thought it was, and I've got a few under my belt now, so I know what the bad ones are like. But yeah, so my first experience with Sebastian was him going from "I'm gonna kill you" to we're best buds instantly.
That's how it went.
Yep. So, but anyway, yeah, it's gone pretty good ever since then. Hey everybody, welcome to Bus Call, the podcast dedicated to the touring industry professionals and their stories. My name is Ryan Goldbacher and I'm going to be your host. In these interviews we're going to break down how touring professionals got into the industry, advice they have for up-and-comers, and awesome stories from the road. For more info, visit us at show-logistics.com and click on the Bus Call podcast at the top of the page. Don't believe me, please, she's already shown me all of her tattoos. All right, everybody, I want to welcome Randy Figarova to Bus Call. Thanks for being here. Randy's a drum tech, and he works with me with Sebastian Bach. We met on the Judas Priest Firepower tour a couple years ago, and he also techs for Bobby Jarzom with Fates Warning and Riot, and he also techs for Nigel Glockler of Saxton. Randy, welcome to Bus Call. How's it going, man?
All right. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How you holding up?
I'm good. Trying to stay COVID-free,
Yeah, man. What's your story about how you got into the music business? I mean, you're kind of from a really small town. There's not a whole lot of connections there and stuff like that, but yet you still were able to make it into arena tours and stuff like that.
Well, I started drumming really, really early, like 5, 6 years old. But I couldn't tell you what it was that got me into music. I guess maybe I saw a drummer somewhere and, remembered that. And I could always just play. I never had any lessons or anything like that. I could just play, so later on in junior high, that's when we had our, I was able to be in band. They didn't let me try out for percussion. They threw me with the French horn. And my uncle, who was a drummer, he said, did you get percussion? I'm like, no, uncle, they didn't even let me try out. So he went up to the school and griped at him a little bit, said, hey, why didn't you let my nephew try out? He's a great drummer. They had switched band directors, so there was new band directors there. One of them that he talked to was named Lou Viafania. I still talk to that guy. He's still a band director here in Texas. And he gave me a shot, and, he took me off French horn and threw me in the percussion class, And so I started there, through junior high and high school, and was in band the whole time. And I started drumming a little bit, like when I was 15, 16, in a couple bands, and then when I was 19, I started playing with some country bands. I always thought that famous people would make money playing music. And I remember I played this gig one time, and we played for like 6 hours at some small bar out in the middle of Texas. And at the end of the gig, they come up to me and hand me some cash, It's like $150 or something. And I'm like, whoa, this is cool. I played drums, had a good time, and they bring me some money after this. And so that kind of got me hooked, And I continued to play with a couple of bands throughout my early 20s. I remember meeting Bobby Jarzom somewhere around 1995, 96. There was a couple of bands that ran around in this area. And in this area, there's a bunch of halls, like big dance halls is what they call them. And those bands would go around every weekend and play these different halls. And I would go out and watch these guys play. And I remember there was a band called Rhythm of the Road who I later played for. It was the first time I saw a drummer that had 2 bass drums. And I'm like, wow, man, why does he have 2 bass drums? I've never seen that before, you know. And again, I was like 14, 15, something like that. So I would watch. I would sit there and watch, you know, all my friends are out drinking and dancing and having a good time, but I would sit there and just watch the drummer or watch the musicians. I started to notice when he would use it, I go, oh, that's cool. You know, I had no idea that could be done, you know. And I think that drummer's name was like John Paul or something like that. And one week I went to see that band and John Paul was gone. I'm like, where'd that John Paul guy go? He was a great drummer. And I get there's some long, blonde-headed, skinny white guy there on the drums. I'm like, this guy's gonna suck. And that was Bobby Jarzom. Man, this guy, he doesn't even have two bass drums. He only has one bass drum. But I didn't know double bass drum pedals existed. I didn't know, you know, I was still new, you know. The band would play a couple of rock songs, and after one of the rock songs, Bobby did this drum solo that completely blew my mind with his footwork and stick twirling, and the sticks were glowing, and I was like, "Oh my God, who is this guy?" So you know, every weekend, you know, they would at the end of the dance, they would have people at the door, and they would hand out these little cards that had all the dates for that band for the whole year and what hall they were going to be in. We would follow that band. You know, there was 2 or 3 bands going around at that time, and we'd follow whatever band we liked. And okay, where's this band playing? And okay, they're right down the road, 25 miles. Let's go. And then the following weekend, where are they playing? Well, they're right down the road, 5 minutes away. You know, later I'm like, well, I want maybe that guy will let me play a song. Maybe they'll let me play a song with them. You know, I was just, you know, because knew I could play. I wanted to see if they would let me play a song with them. And I remember showing up like an hour early before the show started, and Bobby would walk in, and I was just a kid. Like I said, I was 14, 15, something like that. And these dance halls were out in the country, in the middle of nowhere. So this certain dance hall was called the Inez Community Center, and that's where I went to go wait for Bobby to show up. And I asked him, I said, hey, you know, you think I can play the drums? And he's like, you know, beat it, kid, you know. You know, but he wasn't really like that. But, you know, it wasn't his decision to make, you know, and I knew that. And I would just ask. It never hurt to ask. They never let me play. But anyway, I said, okay, it's cool. And maybe we'll work together sometime. And Bobby said, yeah, kid. And lo and behold, you know, later on, we're buddies working together. And, you know, it's kind of a cool deal, you know. You know, I lost contact with Bobby, I think in 2000, somewhere towards the end when he left that band. I didn't see him again until I was like 21, and somebody said, hey, Randy, MTV's on. Isn't that your buddy Bobby on TV? And I look at the TV, and sure enough, it's Bobby with Rob Halford doing some kind of interview on MTV. I was like, yeah, that's Bobby. I remember I was in Austin recording with a band that I played with, and we had to run into one of the music stores to grab some gear. And there was this DVD playing in the background. I'm like, God, that guy looks familiar. And I looked closer, and I said, wait a minute, that's Bobby again. He's got this instructional DVD out. The guy goes, you know that guy? I said, well, a long time ago, yeah, I used to follow him and watch him play. So I said, can I, you know, you have any more DVDs? He goes, well, this is the only one I have. So he sold me that one. I think there was an email on there where I emailed him and said, hey, I remember you from the band back in the day. And I said, if you ever need a tech, you know, give me a shout, you know. And I never thought he'd call, ever. It was like a year and a half later when I got an email from him saying, hey, can you give me a call? And I'm like, oh, my gosh, Bobby Jarzom just emailed me. And that was like 2007, somewhere on there. The first time he called me, I think it was for the Sebastian Bach Guns N' Roses tour, I think it was. He wasn't sure. He was just interviewing people. I didn't get the job that time until later. He interviewed me again, I think, with, it might have been Riot or Sebastian Bach. And I had just started a band. I think he didn't want to mess that up for me, so he went with another guy. So that was the second time we kind of missed us working together. And it didn't happen until like 2014 when he gave me a call and things worked out. You know, I was free. I was ready to go. He needed a tech, and that's when it all started.
I mean, you've worked with Bobby a ton, but you also got the gig with Nigel and Saxon. How'd you end up?
I got that gig on a Fates Warning tour because I worked with Fates Warning. Yeah, Bobby was a drummer for Fates Warning, and I went out with them once. Their tour manager, Jason Engel, and their stage manager, Joey Stumpo, were on the stage while I was setting Bobby's kit up, and there's a million pieces to it. Mm-hmm. And I set it up pretty quick. They're like, hey, man, you did that pretty quick. yeah, I'm used to the kit, and he said, and Joe, I remember Joey saying, and all the legs are straight. I said, what do you mean? He said, man, this guy that we hired for Saxon, he can never get the legs straight. And I'm like, really? They said, you think you can get all his legs straight? I'm like, yeah. You think you might want the Saxon gig? I said, sure, yeah. I said, as long as you think me and Nigel would work good together, I'll try it out. The whole crooked leg problem was just a bad mount. I switched out the mount and everything was fine. So that worked out pretty well.
So what things have you really stuck out about the things you've gotten to see all over the country or wherever you've been?
But as far as in the States, I really like New York. On one of the tours, or a couple of times, me and the guys on a day off near New York, we'd head into New York City and kind of walk around, hang out at Central Park. That's probably been my favorite state is New York. A couple of the shows, Jimmy Kimmel Saturday Night Live shows. We've been there.
Yeah, just New York's just got so much stuff. I mean, there's especially entertainment related. It's just like nonstop. I like going to New York and visiting New York. I hate doing shows there, just because it's just such a nightmare to get.
Oh, of course.
Get the buses and the trucks in and out, and I mean that's the real big issue. But luckily the crews are always really good, so it's not so much of an issue. But there's always like time pressure, and then of course everybody's in New York, so there's all these interview requests, and you got to go do podcast or some kind of shoot or something like that, and it's just the worst possible day to do a show. Is like the most difficult show you do every tour, all tour. So I can't. I love visiting New York, but I hate going there for work. But have you ever? You did Rock in Rio, didn't you? Didn't you do that tour? Did you go down to Brazil with Saxon when they went with Priest?
Oh yeah, that was. Oh my gosh, man.
That wasn't Rock in Rio, was it?
The last show. No, it was just a club there. Getting there was insane because the final date of that Firepower tour with Judas Priest was in San Antonio, which is 2 hours away from me being home. And I've been on the road 2-3 months already. And after that San Antonio show, we had to pack up, fly to Mexico City, and we had like a 5-hour layover there, and then hop on a plane to Sao Paulo, Brazil. And we got like an hour of sleep when we got there and went and did a show, and then hopped right back on the plane back to Mexico City to do the last show, and then fly back home. So I was like, gosh, that was the longest tour ever. That Judas Priest Firepower tour was the longest tour. And then getting caught in that snowstorm for like 2 or 3 weeks. There was a point in that tour, I'm sure you remember, where it snowed like every day for like 2 weeks. And I was like, but you might be used to that, right?
I vaguely remember. Well, I'm not really. I mean, it doesn't. But I mean, you're a Texas boy, man. It's, But I do remember it snowing a lot, and it was an issue. But like it probably doesn't register in my head because it being an arena tour, you don't really go outside.
I don't know how I made it through that tour without getting fired. I should have been.
So what's the story? Why would you have gotten fired?
Oh, there was like 3 times I could have gotten fired on that tour.
Yeah. They needed you too much.
First one was, I remember meeting you, and I felt sorry for you because your band never had any beer. I don't drink beer. And the guys from Saxon would have like 4, 5, 6 cases at the end of the night, every night. And I remember seeing you walking to your bus, and I would say, hey.
Yeah, you guys want some beer? And you're like sneaking it over. Do you want some beer? We don't have any room for it. I remember that.
You want some beer? Here, take a couple cases. The guys will never know. I think I did the whole tour, man.
Dude.
The second time is when during sound check, I remember Bobby would always show me these different exercises on the drums, and I would try them. And I remember doing one time, and Scott Travis, the drummer for Judas Priest, would always come back when the curtain was down and sit right behind me and mess with his drums a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing an exercise, and I think what I was doing sounded like the intro to Painkiller. And I heard, that's enough of that. And here comes Scott Travis. Scott Travis walks from behind the curtain, and he looks at me. He goes, "Is that you playing?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you're a real drummer then." I said, "Yeah, I play." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," he thinks I was trying to play Painkiller, and I wasn't. It was just an exercise. But he just kind of laughed about it, and that was it.
Yeah.
And like the third time, we're sound checking with Saxon at one of our headliners, and Nigel was nowhere to be found. And the whole band was ready to go. So Biff just says, "Randy, get up on those drums."
Was Black Star Riders
What's that?
on that gig?
Oh, it might have been us. It was a theater somewhere or casino. I can't remember.
I
But I
remember
remember the whole band
casino
was
we
on
did.
stage and they couldn't find Nigel. Yeah, Biff's like, "Hey, Randy, hop on the drums." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm sitting there and I'm jamming with the band during sound check. And when I stopped, I remember Biff saying, "I told Joe you're a better drummer than Nigel anyway." And Nigel is right behind me. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Nigel's kind of burning a hole right through me. I'm like, "Nigel, this is your gig. I don't want this." Man.
Yeah.
So that's three
I'm just
times
doing
I
what
should
I'm
have been
told.
fired.
You know, one of the cool stories that me and you have together was the first time I met Sebastian.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy day, but so I kind of lay it out, but I'll let you know when to tell the rest of the story because you have a different perspective of it all. So I was just subbing in for 3 shows, and you guys already done a show or 2 or something like that. I was supposed to get on like the earliest flight out of Nashville to make the gig, and this is the only time I've ever done this. But I was working Bonnaroo the day before, and I don't think I got home till like 4 a.m. And I would, if you ever have worked Bonnaroo, it's the most exhausting thing in the world. I probably shouldn't have ended up doing it just because of, having to fly off the next day, but I was already committed. So I get home and I'm like, I'm just going to go to sleep for 45 minutes. I was already packed. I was literally ready to go. And I wake up about 5 minutes before my plane takes off. And I was just kicking myself. So I missed the flight. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I call up your tour manager at the time, and he was like, dude, just get on the next possible flight you can. And I just go to the airport. I'm like, get me on the next flight. And of course, it's United, so it's like who knows if the plane's actually going to make it there. But I got there before sound check. But anyway, so I hadn't even met Sebastian at that point, and we do sound check, we do the show. It was like one of those clubs where there's no backstage area, and I remember you and Don, our security guy, had to like push Sebastian through the crowd to get him to the stage. And my first experience working with Sebastian was him jumping on that stage at the moment. So anyway, we do the show, and I'm sitting out front. I'm like, oh, it's going pretty good. Everything sounds all right. I was pretty happy. But then, all right, so you take from there. The show's over. Sebastian gets on the bus, and then what happens?
I remember I'm sitting in the bus up in the lounge area, and Sebastian walks in the bus, and he's like, "What's up, Randy?" I'm like, "Hey, good show." And I remember you're sitting right across from me. He turns around, looks at you. He looks at me. He's like, "Who's this guy? Who is this guy?" I'm like, hey! It's like I thought he was gonna attack you, throw you off the bus. I said, "Hey, Sebastian, that's our sound guy." "What? That's our sound guy. It's Ryan." He's like, "Oh man, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, man." He goes, "I didn't know who you were. I thought you were just a fan." And like, oh my gosh, man.
But then he goes
I thought you were a goner.
Then he goes like he went from getting ready to kill me to like instantly he's like, dude, that was the best I've ever sounded in my whole life. You were awesome. I'm like, oh, all right, I guess it went pretty good then. This is all right. So, but
yeah, and it was a great show.
Yeah, it really was. It was a small place, but that made it. I mean, to be honest with you, from the show perspective, it made it better. If it was a big empty room, it wouldn't have been as much fun. But it was,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tiny stage, it's a tiny place, but it was a good night considering. I thought it was, and I've got a few under my belt now, so I know what the bad ones are like. But yeah, so my first experience with Sebastian was him going from "I'm going to kill you" to we're best buds instantly.
That's how it went.
Yep. So, but anyway, yeah, it's gone pretty good ever since then. But tell me some of the crazy stories that you can tell that won't get us fired.
Well, there's a few. Let me give you one that I can tell, because I think some of the other ones are probably still under investigation or something. You weren't with us yet. I think you were coming in when we had Tim TMing for a while.
Oh, so yeah, well,
this was in Las Vegas.
So Tim, I did that 3-show run when you guys were on tour. I only did 3 shows, and then I did a one-off, and I was already committed to another tour. So Tim Harding subbed in for me for like a week.
So Brent Woods had some shows booked with Chevy Metal which is with Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters.
Mm-hmm.
They had some stuff booked, I think, and Brent was going to be able to make some shows, so they needed another guitar player. This guy's name came up, I guess. His name was Bruiser Brody. And
I know this story.
They called him. They called him up and say, "Hey, come up, we're going to do a little audition for us. You're going to play the show with us, or play the show with Bach and the guys. Bring your gear, and we're going to do this in Vegas." So I'm like, "Wow, man, what an audition, in Vegas." I think, what was that? Is it called Fremont Street or something?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Something like that. Bruiser Brody shows up with like brand new gear that he bought, just to have the best gear. And they get up on stage and they start playing. And there was a time when Sebastian would take his microphone and start swinging it as hard as he could. So the techs would have to make sure that the microphone was taped.
Yeah, well, he would do the Roger Daltrey thing, but like times 50.
Yeah. So I would never want that job I never wanted the job as the taping guy, because I don't want to be responsible if something happens. Well, show kicks off. It's first song, and after first chorus or something, Sebastian starts swinging that microphone as hard as he could, and there's thousands of people in the crowd, and I'm watching, and all of a sudden I don't see the mic anymore. In my head, I'm like, oh my God, somebody's dead. Somebody in the crowd is dead, and we're all going to jail right away, all of us. I'm looking in the crowd, and I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for some people to start turning and looking in a direction, So I turn my attention back towards the stage, to see the guys, and Bruiser Brody's gone. I'm like, so it's during the show it's hard to hear each other over those radios because the music's so loud. So I'm looking around. I'm like, where's Bruiser at? And I look behind the stages. Those stages are pretty big, so he's way in the back, and I see his girlfriend's holding a towel on his head. She moves that towel, and there's a huge gash right on his head. The mic flew off and hit Bruiser Brody right in his head in the middle of a song in his audition. And I'm like, oh my God.
It's the first song. So it's not like you've got halfway through the show.
Yeah, it's the first song.
Let alone getting hit in the head with a 58. He is probably going 100 miles an hour. He didn't even get to play a little bit to kind of audition for the gig.
Well, he actually came out and he did the whole show with blood all over his face and everything.
All right.
But, he didn't get the gig, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, he probably had a concussion.
Didn't get the gig.
Yeah, there's a video of that online, and you don't really see Brody getting hit, but you see Sebastian swinging the mic around, and then, all of a sudden he's kind of like looking at the end of the mic, and the mic's gone. You can kind of see Brody. You can kind of see Brody like walk behind the stage real slow, but it was I mean, it's a terrible thing, but I'm so sad that I missed that. That's such a good story.
Yeah. No, that was insane.
Yeah, man. So what advice do you have for people looking to maybe become a drum tech or just a tech in general or get into the touring business?
I've always focused on drums and stuff, but, coming up, trying to get in the business, I would get into kind of everything, and get into guitars, and how to work and the amps, why these different amps, different speakers, stuff like that, or even like monitors or front of house.
Yeah, expand your horizon.
So, learn a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Well, because you never know. During those shows, anything happens. Something an amp might go out, but it might be on your side of the stage where the other guy can't get to, and you may be able to fix something real quick.
But I mean, it's just important in general because you have a forte like yours is drums, and my forte is front of house, but I can also tour manage. And then you never know when somebody's going to say, "Hey, Randy, I know you're drum tech, but will you come tech guitar for me for a week?" You could do the job. You may not be as good as John Franco is or somebody else, but you could get the job done and you could do it pretty well. I think probably everybody should have like a secondary, at least interest in a gig in touring, especially, since we don't really know what's going to be happening coming up. If you can do 2 jobs and save an artist some money, you're probably going to be in a better spot than somebody that's just a one-trick pony.
That's true.
That can only tour manage, or can only do front of house, or can only tech. So if you can wear a couple hats, it's not a bad idea at all. Any other stories you want to tell?
I remember the first time me and Sebastian really talked. We were in Arkansas right before a show, and our hotel happened to be a block away or so. And Sebastian needed to go back to his room. There was so many people outside the bus waiting. The fans were excited. They were ready for the show, but the bus happened to be parked right there at the front of the venue. And like I said, the hotel was a block away. And Sebastian's like, I need to get to that hotel. I said, hey, Sebastian, if you need to get to the hotel, I can get you there. He's like, you can? I'm like, yeah. Well, let's do it. He puts his hand on my shoulder. He still does this today. He'll put his hand on my shoulder, and I just go for it. If we knock somebody over, oh well. And I remember
if they get in Randy's right way, they're going down.
it's and Don's usually right behind me, Don Sullivan. So I get him to his hotel, and I get him back to the bus before the show, and I remember him telling Dave Hart at that time was the tour manager, if I ever need anything, you send me this guy right here. I don't know his name, but you send me that guy. I'm like, okay. And Dave Hart's like, apparently you work for Sebastian too now. I'm like, what? And I told Bobby about it. Say, hey, Bobby, I think I work for Sebastian too now. He's like, what did you do? I don't know, but he likes me for some reason. But he's all right, Sebastian. He's all right. If you're a friend of his, you're golden to him.
When you're in, you're in with him. I mean, he's a loyal dude. Well, Randy, thanks for doing this with me, man. I appreciate it, and hope you're holding in pretty well down there in Texas. Hope it's not too hot right now.
Oh, it's too hot. It's way too hot.
Well, cool, dude. Well, let's keep in touch, man, and we'll meet up again one day.
All right,
buddy. Thanks so much.
Good talking to you, Ryan.
All right, catch you later. Hey, everybody, thanks for listening to Bus Call. If you like the podcast, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit us at patreon.com/buscall. Patreon members will get the podcast a week before it's released to the public, and they can also sign up to have advance notice of who's going to be on and the opportunity to ask questions. Please take some time to visit show-logistics.com. We've dedicated the first page to sell merch to raise money for Crew Nation's Global Relief Fund. As you know, with COVID-19, basically all touring has stopped for the foreseeable future, and there's thousands and thousands of crew out of work, and we're donating all the profits, many of the merch sold there, straight to Crew Nation. Thanks so much again, and please rate, review, and subscribe.